what's interesting is that actually, if you look at what's going on, this is the most disruptive and fascinating time in the technology industry than has ever existed before. And the reason is that many of the predictions that were made during the 1990s are actually starting to come true. There are a number of things coming together, right? If you look at the marriage between big data, enormous amounts of data, whether it be from enterprises or from consumer social networks, enormous amounts of the capability of so-called machine learning, the ability for computers to learn based on enormous quantities of data, and now the rise of artificial intelligence algorithms, which are, it depends on whether you want to call it machine learning or AI, but algorithms which are far more sophisticated than ever existed before. The whole cryptocurrency revolution is about to change that game again. So if you think technology's, kind of there and being done, you ain't seen nothing yet, as they say. Now that automation is going to happen in agriculture because it's cheaper. Robots don't go on strike. Robots don't want a pension. Robots are efficient and can work 24 hours a day. So it's a big deal. It's going to be a massive, massive deal. So there's only a lot of efficiency created through technology in the agri-tech space. And interestingly, the biggest area for disruption in the agri-tech space isn't in like planting more things or harvesting, because that's actually still quite a complex issue, and there are not many machines that have been invented that can be autonomous in that space. It's starting to happen. There are autonomous tractors now, but it's fairly early days. But the really interesting thing that's happening at the moment is data. Because the more data that you can produce from farms, the more accurate you can do in your harvesting, the more accurate predictions you can make about your yield and your harvest and your planting and your seasons and all of those things. Bitcoin right now in itself, the first thing to do is it's the first implementation of blockchain. And a Bitcoin is the first consumer application for a blockchain, a cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin market, given that there's in theory only 21 million Bitcoins that can ever be made, that's in Bitcoin original, classic, whatever you want to call it, not Bitcoin Cash or the forks that were created. That is something like 25 times cheaper than the gold market right now. And if you think that the storage of value internationally has been considered to be gold, if Bitcoin replaces gold, then technically speaking it's undervalued at this point. That's an interesting thought, isn't it? But the issue with Bitcoin is that it's the first implementation of blockchain technology, and it's kind of over. It's kind of done, right? So it will be used as a storage of value. It is used as a gateway drug to cryptocurrencies. Like you can go, we could walk out here and we could find a taxi driver that wants to buy a Bitcoin, right? A year ago, taxi drivers didn't even know what a Bitcoin was. And so that's a mainstream idea. Now, if you ask the taxi driver what about Ethereum, they probably wouldn't know what it was. Or Monero, or EOS, or Neo, or anyone, or Filecoin, or Litecoin, or any one of those coins out there. They wouldn't know what those were, but they know what Bitcoin is. But the really fundamental thing is blockchain. And blockchain is going to be changing lots and lots of industries, because suddenly blockchain is the authentication layer that the internet was always meant to have, but never did. If Tim Berners, Vint Cerf, when he invented TCP/IP, had added an authentication layer over TCP/IP, then we wouldn't be having this discussion right now. We probably would be living in the world of flying cars because it's such a transformational technology. But we didn't, and it only recently got invented in the last few years. And so now blockchain technology is going to create a new world of what they call decentralization, which means that you're creating economies out of whole industries. Instead of just GAFA, we call it GAFA in the tech world, Google, Apple, Facebook, Amazon. Now, most of us, we consider insurance pretty boring, right? It's pretty boring. Have you got insurance? Yes. Have you got insurance? No. Okay. How much is insurance? There you go. It's boring, right? We had a guy who was speaking about insurance using the blockchain. Everyone was like, what? Tell me more. How does it work? Your smart contracts? Oh my God, incredible. It's like nuts. And we were like, okay, we have to move on now to other. They were like, no, stay. We're talking about insurance on the blockchain. It's like, what? Because the really weird thing is that actually insurance turns out to be massively disruptive by blockchain technologies. The token economy that's being produced by all this blockchain stuff, it's supposed to produce new applications, but at the moment there's such hype around cryptocurrency that a lot of the innovation that's supposed to be happening isn't happening because of the cryptocurrency hype. Actually, there's a growing movement inside Silicon Valley, a small number of people who are saying we need to build products now which are not making us ill, right? Don't make us ill with your product. But generally speaking, the best thing to do is to try and sort of pitch it differently compared to how somebody else is going to be pitching it. Think a little bit differently. It's a little bit easier to get noticed somehow. One of the problems with startups is that they often they build, and then they think, okay, we're ready to tell everybody, and then they kind of emerge from their cave, you know, where they've been coding, and then they kind of, right, let's tell everybody, but they haven't been noticing what's been going on. And it turns out, actually, a month ago, there was a news story about that sector that they're operating in, and they chose to ignore it and carry on coding, right? And actually, it would have been smarter to jump in on that conversation because it's actually about that area that they're working in, and just call up all the journalists who are writing about that subject. The journalists are in the business of news. Journalists are not in the business of writing about your company. They're in the business of writing about the news and serving their readers. So if you've got something that you think the readers should know about, that's when you hit the journalists. And in journalism is that, unfortunately, we've painted ourselves into a corner. You know, the old days of being able to produce a print newspaper and selling advertising and classified advertising on it are kind of over now. It's very difficult to make money out of that unless you are in a country, for instance, that is locked by language. So, you know, and there's not many competitors. There's a business in there, but these days it's a legacy business. It's kind of a dying business. And online news media got into the business a long time ago of producing free content in return for traffic, and then actually it turned out that it's the law of diminishing returns, as they say. You know, you get more and more traffic, that creates more inventory, advertising inventory. The advertising inventory is worth less, and you have to create more traffic, and then you're in a circle, race to the bottom. Online education was considered to be a huge boom. There was a boom a few years ago. The boom was in MOOCs, massive online something. What was it? Massive online education. So kind of like online universities, and you go, you select, I want to learn English literature, go, and then you do a course, etc. But the predictions made about that space were actually not great. It turned out not to be so disruptive, right? There's been a new recent trend called snackable content. You just watch the thing, like, okay, great. And then it goes off again, great. And then you sort of learn things as you go quickly. Ton of innovation in the recent times because people are a bit stuck. Because the problem was that technology companies said, right, we're going to solve education with technology. But it turned out the problem that they were solving was incorrect. The problem they needed to solve was content. And so actually the newest phases of online education is very, very, very good content, like Hollywood level movies. Really, really, really good movies, really, really good content. The really interesting thing that's going to happen in online education is going to be in emerging markets, say in Latin America or in China or in Africa, where you cannot print 1 billion textbooks. Just you cannot do it, and the pace of learning needs to quicken because the things you need to learn, like technology platforms and things, keep changing. And you can't just keep printing another textbook all the time. The textbooks are out of date.